Reading with your kids.
Hey, so great to see you. Come on in. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville and the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We're so happy that you're part of our beautiful Reading with Your Kids family. Please be sure to subscribe to this show on the iHeartRadio app, on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Himalaya, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Jared Woolf. He is the author of Sword of Merlin. He's also the dad to 7 kids between the ages of 1 and 16. Before we begin to ask Jared about Sword of Merlin and to ask him how in the world he finds time to write while being the dad of 7 kids, we want to let you know that this episode of the podcast is brought to you in part by Vooks. VOOKS.com. Vooks.com. We love Vooks. Vooks combines the love, trust, and safety of children's books with the convenience of online streaming for a whole new way to experience stories with their growing library of animated storybooks that both kids and parents will love. By adding movement, sound, and narration to existing books, Vooks brings stories to life, encouraging the love of reading while promoting literacy, imagination, and focus for children 2 to 8 years old. With Vooks, children can learn, laugh, and let their imagination soar, while parents can feel good about letting their little ones enjoy quality, guilt-free screen time. Right now, Vooks is offering a free 1-year subscription to every single teacher and homeschooling parent. What a deal! Vooks also has great resources that are free to go along with some of their most beloved titles. To learn more and to take advantage of that free 1-year subscription for every single teacher and homeschooling parent, be sure to go to Vooks.com. That's VOOKS.com. Vooks.com. We also want to let you know that this episode is also brought to you by the last surviving dinosaur, the Tyrannosaurus, written by Stephen Joseph and playfully illustrated by Andy Case. Hey, you know, what would make a better read-aloud experience than a book that has 6 cranky relatives, 3 mean dinosaurs, and 1 very cranky Tyrannosaurus? This book tells the tale of how the dinosaurs became extinct. And now, it's not that life-ending meteor shower thing the paleontologists are often citing. The Tyrannosaurus is so cranky that she makes all the other bigger and meaner dinosaurs disappear. That is, until she comes across the only dinosaur who is immune to her incessant complaining, the Tyrannosaurus. These 2 dinosaurs evolved into humans, and that's where cranky people come from. Throughout the illustrated book, family members and dinosaurs humorously battle to have the very best saurus. Now, saurus is a Yiddish word for big. I mean really big. I mean really big problems. And these problems include warts, alligator attacks, and brain tumors. I mean, poor cousin Dottie grew an entire forest on her feet. Oi! And the best part of this very funny book is that it's not just for cranky kids. As the storyteller says, even mommy and daddy can be crankosauruses and kvetchosauruses sometimes. As it turns out, everybody has a bit of This is what's so much fun about this book. It's so much fun trying to read. As it turns out, everyone has a bit of Tyrannosaurus and Tyrannosaurus in him or her. The last surviving dinosaur reminds readers to be mindful of when and how often they complain. A lesson from which all readers, young and old, can benefit. The Last Surviving Dinosaur, the Tyrannosaurus by Stephen Joseph, is available online at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and many other online bookstores. Joining us on the line right now from the beautiful state of Utah, he is the author of a fantastic new book called The Sword of Merlin. Please welcome to the show, Jared Woolf. Jared, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me, Jed.
You're very welcome. I'm excited to have you on as someone who does educational magic shows. Merlin is, I guess, a character near and dear to the hearts of many magicians. Tell us all about the Sword of Merlin, please.
Well, it's about a magical family, and they are actually, after the time of Merlin, they have passed down his magical sword through their family, and and with the knowledge of how to use it, and then they have some trials. There's a bad guy, and they have to kind of fight it out, and it's all about the main character's name is Japheth, and he is chosen to have the sword. He's kind of a older teenager, age-wise, and he doesn't want to embrace those responsibilities, but as you get into the book, he kind of realizes it has to be him, and so he embraces those responsibilities and working together with his family and community to go on to be victorious.
That's kind of a common theme that a lot of teenagers kind of have to face, this whole idea of, I don't think I can do this, but I kind of have to suck it up and deal with it because there's no one else here to do the job.
Yeah. I think, there comes a time in everybody's life when they kind of realize I have to grow up. Being a kid was great, but eventually you have to move on to adulthood, unfortunately.
That's what my wife keeps telling me, but I'm holding out for as long as I can.
Yeah, that's two of us.
Now, where did you get the inspiration for the Sword of Merlin?
I was trying to write a Western. I'd been reading a lot of Louis L'Amour books, and I had a great idea, but me and my wife have 7 children, and so, time is in short supply, and it kind of fizzled out. And one night, I had a dream that was the basis for this book. And so, as I would write it, when I finished a chapter, I would read it with my kids. And so, instead of fizzling out, they were always like, "Hey, Dad, have you finished a chapter? Can we read another chapter?" And so it was kind of, helped inspire me to keep going and actually get it finished rather than have it be, something that just sat and then eventually got forgot. So.
What a neat story. A lot of authors come on and they say, "Oh, I was inspired by this, or this thought came to me and I had to write it down. It came to me in a dream. I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't thinking about writing a book." But you were intentional. You wanted to write a book. It just wasn't happening for you. And then you kind of found a way to get it done and to keep yourself inspired. Did you understand that you were doing that? You were creating this accountability for yourself as it was happening, or was it just kind of a neat surprise?
More of a surprise. Me and my wife, we make it a point to read with our kids. My oldest son's about to turn 16, and our youngest is a year old, and we think it's really important. So, you have, when I was writing it, I didn't see that as the push, but now looking back on it, I can see, they were a great help, because there would be times with work and family and things, I wouldn't touch it for weeks. And so, after so long though, they just would not let me quit. And so I didn't really see it then, but I can look back and see it easier now, how much help they were.
Now, I'll be remiss, and I know there'll be people out there screaming at their device if I don't ask you, where in the world did you find time and the energy to write a book when you have 7 kids between the ages of 1 and 16?
At night, when they were asleep.
But that's when you should have been, passing out from exhaustion, I'm imagining.
Yeah, well, and to be honest, I didn't write for long stretches. It's not like I sat at the computer for hours and hours. I would, the job that I drive, and I have time to think, and so I would try to think about where I was at and where I wanted to go with the story during the day, so when I came home, I could just kind of get it down on paper, and so I didn't have to do a lot of the thinking as well as writing.
Yeah. Now, it's, magic is something that I do professionally, and I kind of came to it. It wasn't a passion of mine when I was a kid. It kind of happened, I was performing and with one art and one set of skills, and then it just kind of was introduced to me, and I just kind of grew into it. Have you always had a fascination with magic and magical stories? I enjoy that genre of books, or
I remember when my kids were younger and we were going to read Harry Potter with them, and they were like, "Oh, we don't want to read Harry Potter." We actually tried to get them to read it on their own. And so we sat down with the first book and read it, and they were like, "We have to read the next one." And I said, "No, you can read the next one on your own. You know, we want to get you inspired to read that stuff." But, you know, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, those types of things, me and my family enjoy those types of things. And I actually, know a few card tricks and things. I do like to do those types of things as well, but more just to wow my younger children more than anything.
You know, when I was much younger, I really loved the fantasies and diving into a new world with you know, different kind of physics and, you know, different characters and different creatures and all of that. But I'll be honest, it was really difficult for me sometimes to keep keep those rules in that universe, my understanding of that universe, together in my head. What's it like trying to keep all those things together as you're creating them?
It was kind of difficult. I didn't really make an outline. I had the story, the basics of the story in my head, and so, a lot of times I would write and get to a point, and before I could write again, I'd have to go back and read the last chapter or so I could remember where I was at, because I had everything up here, but I wasn't sure where I had left it on the paper. And so there was a lot of, backtracking and making sure that I kept everything straight, because I didn't have any notes to follow. I did make notes as I went, so to help keep it clear, but it wasn't really too bad. It required a little bit of extra time reading where I had left off before.
Now, why did you choose to create the story or bring the story to life in a middle grade book?
We have, with our older kids, we read some books and they're kind of on the borderline of, should you, is this something that's appropriate for children? And I really wanted a book that I felt like adults would be able to enjoy, but you could read it with your children, or if they got a hold of it, they could read it and you wouldn't have to worry about any of the content, the language or inappropriate scenes or things like that. In fact, one of our friends, we saw him yesterday, and they said, "Oh, we love the book. We just finished it." And I said, "Well, good." I said, "What did the kids think?" And they said, "Well, they love it, but we had to finish without them because they couldn't stay up late enough. So we stayed up and finished reading it without them." So I wanted to make it something that the whole family could enjoy.
What kind of value? Now, you're an expert when it comes to kids and being a dad. You're right in the middle of it, and you probably have a lot more experience, a lot more experience than the average person, having 7 kids between the ages of 1 and 16. What do you feel is the value of reading with your kids, and especially kids of all ages?
For the younger ones, they like that one-on-one time, and I'll get home from work and my 3-year-old will say, she'll come up and give me a hug and say, "Dad, read me a story." So we'll read a book on colors or shapes or, something that, that she's interested in and it helps her learn. And then, with the older kids, it's a good opportunity because some of the books we read, the things that they teach aren't necessarily the things that we would, believe in. And so it's good to when you read a book to say, what are the lessons it's teaching? How do we apply it in our lives? Do we see that in our lives? And so, that's one of the focuses we try to do as we read, is to point out the things the books are teaching and, whether those things are good, bad, or indifferent.
That is something that is so very important. It's something that it's what's called media literacy. And I think it's so important for parents to help their kids become media literate, and not only literate in terms of reading, but also literate in terms of all the media that they're consuming, whether it's books or music or video, television shows, movies, video games. All of these things are created, and they're created with a purpose. Some of these things are created just to make a lot of money. Other things are created with, to deliver a specific message. And it's important for us to sit down and to talk to our kids about whether or not these values are values that are in line with the ones that we want our kids to hold.
Yeah, I agree. And especially today, I mean, I remember growing up with no computers, no internet, anything like that. And so, all these different ideas weren't as readily accessible as they are today. And so, you have to realize your kids are going to come across pretty much everything that's out there. And so if you can teach them at a younger age to kind of discern which things are good or bad, then, when they get older, they'll be ready when they come across those things.
And it makes a lot of sense talking to a dad with 7 kids between 1 and 16. And I don't mean to keep harping back on that, but it just amazes me. But
I can't believe it sometimes myself.
But I think you have a very practical, outlook. And, one of the things, again, you have accepted the fact that there are certain things that you'd rather your kids not see or be exposed to, but you accept the fact that they're going to be exposed. It's out there. And, they may not experience it at your home, but they'll probably run into it at a friend's house, at an event, at school, or on the bus, or wherever. And instead of trying to ban that stuff and say, no, you're not going to see that, I'm going to keep you from it, it's far more effective for us to teach our kids to kind of evaluate what it is they're watching so they can make healthy choices, just like we want them to make healthy choices when it comes to food. We want them to make healthy choices when it comes to the media they consume.
Yeah, and I think, if they don't know what's out there, once they get out on their own, they're going to be exposed to that and not be ready for it, and so I don't think we do our children a service by sheltering them from everything, There's obviously a time and a place for all these different discussions, but I think that we're money ahead to make sure they understand what kind of things they're going to come across.
Now, did you always have this attitude, or did it just come to you, through experience, through, just kind of, you live and you learn kind of thing?
I think more of that. When I was, a new dad and a new mom, we kind of tended to shelter our kids a little bit and try to just make sure that they, were only exposed to things that we approved of. And when you get older, you realize, they come home from a friend's house and they're singing this, this song that you might not, like, or they're saying things or asking you questions. Hey, what does this mean? And so, we soon realize that they're going to hear it. They're going to see it. And so, let's make sure that they understand that those things are out there so that it's not a surprise to them, and they can be ready for it. So it's definitely something that I think we've changed on as we've, been parenting longer.
So I guess the question now is to ask you, so how do you react when your 16-year-old turns to you and says, hey, you didn't let me do that when I was that age?
Yeah. There's that issues that we have with it. And, we said, hey, we're not perfect parents. There was no manual given to us. We're figuring it out, and we figured out that this is probably a better way. So, sorry that we didn't let you do this thing, but this is how we're going to do it from now on.
Well, that is the advice when, I'm of the age right now, my kids are adults right now, so occasionally young parents will come up to me and say, how did you do it? What do you do? What advice do you give? And that's, I think the most important advice I give them is to, find the courage and the strength to admit to your kids that you're not perfect, that you don't know everything, that you're going to make mistakes. And, hey, if we work together to get better on this, it's a lot better than fighting about it and holding grudges.
Yeah. And honestly, kids are pretty observant, and they will let you know that you're not perfect, that you said this and did this, or you said they could do this and now it's different, so, they're sharp. They'll point it out to you if you can't realize it yourself.
Absolutely. You are a wise man. Now, have you always wanted to be a writer?
No, actually, when I was going through high school, I don't think I read a book in high school. I wasn't interested in reading. And my late 20s, I I started to find things I was really interested in, and by then I graduated college, and so the only way to learn about those things was to read, and so I started, getting books that I wanted to read, and I really fell in love with it then, and I kind of, like I was saying earlier, I was reading some Westerns, and I thought I just got this awesome idea I could get down, and that's really what, I didn't know that I would ever publish it or anything. I just wanted to get the story down and out of my head and onto paper. But it's really something that's come along, more later in life.
Well, you touch on something that we've talked about here on the podcast, and it's just the difference between having to read a book and wanting to read a book. I understand as parents, we understand that there's certain books that, kids are supposed to read for school, for their curriculum to, understand what's going on in the classes. And I think sometimes we see how much of a bear it is to try to get our kids to do that reading. You have 5 books you have to read over the summertime. You're not reading anything, and you hound them all summer long. Get on it. It's summer's going to be over. I think maybe a better strategy, and I'm not saying this from experience, but I'm just thinking a better strategy might be, instead of harping on the kids to read that required reading, help them go out and find some books that they're going to want to read, and then as they start to develop or refine that love of reading, maybe it'll be easier for them to pick up the books that have been assigned to them.
Yeah, I agree with that. My oldest son, he used to like to read more than he does now, and I can kind of relate with that. That's, when I was, that middle school, high school age is when I didn't like to read. Mm-hmm. And I understand that, and sometimes I think, well, if you push him too hard, then he's just gonna not do it because, he wants to find some way to rebel against his parents, and so, we like to encourage them, hey, you have to read these things, but why don't you try to find something that you enjoy reading as well? Our second son, he is a bookworm. You can't find him. Where is he? He's down in his room and he's reading, and, he's read a 300-page book in 2 days, and, we don't have to motivate him to find things to read because he'll pick up a book he's read twice, 3 times and read it again if that's what he's in the mood for.
That's wonderful. Do you, getting back to Swords of Merlin, do you identify with any of the characters in your book?
I do. Japheth's father is, I kind of not patterned him after me, but I found as I was writing that I did put a lot of my kind of feelings into it because, his son, in the book, Eli, his dad, is not magical, and he's kind of hesitant to let his son be involved with that because the wizards are persecuted in the book. And, it's kind of about the dad also letting go and saying, hey, my kid's got to grow up. He's got to make his own decisions. And so I kind of feel that way with my oldest son. He's getting that age where he's going to be able to drive and have a lot more freedom. And, I just thought kind of like, I've taught him what I think is right, but eventually he's going to be out there making his own decisions. And so I kind of see myself as that, going through the same things that Eli does.
Now that you've, you said you never thought about being a writer, or you didn't dream about being a writer as a younger person, but now that you've become a published author, did you catch the writing bug? Do you have other books that are in the works?
I do. I've got a couple more that I would maybe like to write in this, one would be probably a prequel. One thing that I don't like in books is when they're like trilogies. I want to pick up a book and read it and be done, because I hate it when I read a book and, the next one's not due out for another year or two. I think, I don't know if I can wait that long. And so with this, I never had that intention, but when I got done, the villain in it, his name is Vesuvius. And when I got done with the book, I wanted to kind of do his backstory and say, why did he become the way he became? Because he's obviously a very smart, talented person, but why did he choose to go down the road that he did? And so I'd like to do a book on that. And there's some more possibilities. I have a couple ideas for some Westerns, and we actually have a legend here in the town that we live in about a lady that we call her the Lady in Black, and she walks along the creek bank guarding the gold that she buried. And so I had a fun story that I thought would go well with that. But we'll have to see. The time's pretty scarce.
Well, that certainly is. That's a reality. There are a lot of folks out there who say, "Oh, I'm so busy," but anybody listening and hearing that you have a job and you're a writer and you're a dad with 7 kids, they're like, "Oh, yep, he gets a pass. He's very, very busy." Tell us where we can connect with you online so that we can find out when the next books are available.
I have a Facebook page. It's Jared Woolf, author. And I put, anytime I do an interview or event or anything, it's up on that. I'm not very tech savvy, so that gets updated, but it's not chock full of information or things. I'm more kind of old school. I used to be on Facebook a lot, and I found it was taking too much time, so I got off, but I'm back on there just to try to keep people, if they're interested in finding out what's going on, there's somewhere they can go to.
That's wonderful. Well, we've been talking to the author of Sword of Merlin, Jared Woolf. Jared, thanks so much for being on the show.
You bet. Thanks, Jed, for having me. Appreciate it.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Buffy Silverman. She'll be here to let us know all about her wonderful STEM book, On a Snow Melting Day. That is the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. If you are the author of a fantastic children's book, we would love to have you as a guest on the show. Being a guest, it's fun, it's easy, and it gives you the opportunity to tell thousands of people about your fantastic children's book. All you need to do is go to our website, readingwithyourkids.com, click on the contact button at the bottom of the page. Let us know about your great book. We'll let you know the next easy steps. We want to thank the folks who made today's show so very, very wonderful. We want to thank Jared Woolf. Be sure to check out Sword of Merlin. We also want to thank our sponsors, our friends at Books. Books.com, a fantastic streaming service for kids and parents who want to read books. Also want to thank our friend Stephen Joseph, the author of The Last Surviving Dinosaur, the Tyrannosaurus, a absolutely adorable book and a really, really fun read-aloud book. I want to thank my amazing producer, Fatima Khan, for all she does for the show. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me, and I want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, and as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.